do you care about people from other fucking countries more than you care about us? We're the ones that are paying for your bullshit to begin with. Maybe you should care about us for once. I don't know, it's a fucking idea, maybe. This is bullshit. This is bullshit, and we all know it is. And I'm sick of it. I'm going to start talking about it more. I'm going to start yelling about it more, because this is dumb.
Hey there, freedom fighters. I'm coming back at you with another one. And this video's topic is going to be, I'm going to expand a little bit on my previous video of, I ended up going off onto a rant about preparedness and stuff like that, even though it was kind of meant to be a different video. And I do that often where I kind of come towards a video with a certain topic or an idea, and I go off ranting about it, and then I end up somewhere in the weeds and talk about something different. Anyway, I used a term in there. I was thinking about the social contract, or is it construct? The social construct. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it might be contract. That makes more sense. But you know, the social contract, and what is that? It's basically, you know, taking care of your citizens, your people, you know, your country, your culture, and a shared value system and stuff like that. And that's why you allow people to rule, or, you know, government's intended purpose. And I did a video about this a while back called, you know, do we need a government, or why do we have government? And that's the reason, you know, we've kind of allowed these people to be in the positions they are. And it's kind of like, you know, the reason you trust your doctor or something like that. And I've talked before about I'm in a weight loss journey, and I've been working out and all that stuff. And it's like if you had a personal trainer, right? You wouldn't trust the fat guy to give you the tips or whatnot, unless they're not fat anymore, right? And they've been through the journey. You know, I saw Jelly Roll. I don't know if you even know who he is. I mean, you got to know who he is by now. He's pretty much on every radio station and every TV show and everything he does. But, you know, he recently lost a ton of weight. And, you know, I was a fan of his from way back in the day, from the very beginning. So to see where, you know, he's at today is pretty remarkable. But, you know, like if you went to a personal trainer and they were like, yeah, this is what I did, and, you know, this, and that, you would feel, you know, you would be more willing to be like, okay, I'm going to hand it over to you. Right. And Jelly was talking about his, meal plans and how, you know, he has a nutritionist and all this stuff. And, you know, it's way easier when you're rich, but, you know, if you could have someone plan your meals out and it's just automated, right? Like, here's your, you know, your breakfast, and here's your lunch. And then, you know, when you're done with your show or your tour, you know, you get a chef cooked dinner. That way, you know, you don't have to take the time of measuring out weight and calories and your macros and, you know, your your vitamins, all this stuff. It's all done for you. And then you go to your trainer, and he knows, you know, your body and what you're built for and what you can handle. And he'll, you know, put the weights up or whatever you need. And it's this trust system is what I'm getting to. And, you trust them to basically lead and, you know, take care of you. And that's essentially, you know, what government was. And the social contract, what I was getting to was, you know, you take care of the roads. You provide certain things and um, basically take care of the country. And I talked before about government and their purpose, and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights has been a big conversation on this channel, and how it wasn't telling us what we can do, but it was guidelines for the government of what they can't, and they are supposed to uphold those um values and principles. But instead, we've somehow gotten into where they've turned on us, and they value the invaders and stuff even more. And I was watching this video the other day that PNW Gorilla did, where Washington State, where he's from, said they're doing, but it's just another lib takeover, and what comes with it is a bunch of unconstitutional laws and screwing over the citizenry and all that stuff. And he went on a rant. He's just like, it's carved out benefits for the illegals and the invaders and helping them, and they get more support, and they get, everything, the welfare and the Section 8 and the housing and the food stamps, and their kids are on free lunch, and they get iPads and computers and free phones and um everything, and then there's free internet and cable and discounted Amazon and all this stuff. And it's like, what about us? And that's what he says. He's like, why are you worried more about them? What about us? And um I've talked about this in immigration and stuff like that before. They're better slaves. They prefer, you know, they don't complain as much. They're happier for less. I mean, and I think I talked about this before about, um, the people that are coming here, and you take someone from, the Middle East or, deep, South America, and they're living in a hut, or they're living in very, poor conditions and poverty and all that stuff. And you throw them in any one of these cities that we would call trash, these garbage ass cities, and you give them a small efficiency apartment and, a temperature controlled environment with, um, a microwave and a refrigerator and, all this stuff, heating and AC. And they're like, holy crap, like, this is great. This is the American dream. This is the environment that, you and I would just be like, this is just bare essentials. This is the basics. And, what's for dinner tonight? And they're like, bottom tier for, us with like canned food or something, a thing of SpaghettiOs, even though I kind of like SpaghettiOs, but that ain't, you know, gourmet. That ain't Chef Boyardee, right? And um, boxed mac and cheese or something like that. They're much happier and willing to accept that because of where they came from. So, we have a shifting a gap, and where Americans and your normal American, like, can they're on that as well. They're just not getting it free, right? They're also suffering, and they're trying to, they can't pay for their health care. They can't, like I was talking about Jelly Roll and his weight loss journey, and I'm on the same thing. I can't get a personal trainer. I can't afford, man, have you seen all these, like, whole food, like healthy food alternatives, um, the vitamins and the protein drinks and the creatine and, um, you know, collagen and all these different things, peptides and all this stuff. The price is insane. I can't afford this crap. So I'm just doing it the old fashioned way, man. Hitting the gym, going for walks, um, just plain old exercise. But And then it's like I said, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and stuff to tell you what they're not allowed to do. And I've talked about a representative government before, and taking the guns and all that stuff. That's breaking the social contract. You are no longer allowed to rule or be in positions of power, doing that kind of stuff, and that's why they side with the invaders. And Virginia's been a lot in the news, and a lot of people have been talking about that, and we talked about that, and new laws being proposed and everything. And they got this one bright idea here that they want you to lock up all your guns, and you can't carry and all this stuff. So they already said, like, they make it, we've talked about New York and stuff like that, how they make everywhere a uncarry zone. So you're uncertain of where you can carry. It's like, oh no, this close to a government building, oh, a state-owned building, school zones, um, anywhere that's considered, like, not even just schools, but like people's homes that they turn into schools, daycares, and religious places. So you don't know where these churches are and all these other things, and government buildings and whatnot. And it basically turns everywhere into a gun-free zone. So then you're like, okay, you got to leave them in your car. And then they're like, well, they've got to be locked up in this like a straight up vault. And if the criminals break in and then steal your guns, well, then it's also your fault. They side with the invader again, or the criminal. And I say invaders because New York, California, wherever they're all, and now Virginia is going to be a sanctuary state. And that's what it's going to be. It's going to be full of illegals, and they know everyone's keeping the guns in the cars. So then they're going to break in looking for that, and then they're going to charge the victim for the crime. And the whole reason they do this is because that's their voter base, right? And I've talked about it. You're in a war. It's a civil war, and this is their shock troops. This is their army, and that's the whole point. But and I also saw recently the California mayor came and called to unite with gang members. He's like, oh, I want all 55 heads of the gangs to come together, and we could fight ICE. And basically coming out saying, like, we're gonna face the federal government with all our gang members. This is the war game, the strategy of the left. And the Republicans don't take it seriously. And I've said it over and over, they're a joke, right? And the Trump administration doesn't understand it. They don't understand you're in a literal war. And they've backed down from Minnesota, right? Tim Walz and all these people just wrapped up in corruption, using federal funds, and they funnel all this money, and then they launder it in their Ukraine schemes and all their other wars and stuff like that, and they bring it back home, and then they give the invaders all the free stuff, and then they crack down on you with law and make you obey and pay for and help their new servants. And whenever you get out of line, they put them in the streets and they keep you in check, and it's a never-ending war. And that's it. The social contract has been broken, and you're kind of seeing people start to realize it and break free of it, but they're really not, because I've already talked about it before, how they're like, oh man, like, this is getting too ugly. We don't like the look of these, these raids and the National Guard and the military in the streets and all this. I talked about it. And, Matt Walsh and all that said the same thing. Like, what did you think it was going to look like? We were just going to say, hey, guys, we had an election, and, let's shake hands, and you got to go home now. and you guys are criminals, and the Mayor Fry and Ilhan Omar and all that. Well, guys, you guys committed fraud, and we're just gonna come in your state and arrest you and charge you all this stuff. It's never gonna happen. And I talked about in that past video about the Andrew Tate interview on the PBD podcast, and this is what I was intentionally gonna try to get into, and how he talked about at one part in that interview, he said, you wouldn't have all this chaos and stuff in the streets if it wasn't for like the wealth. They were talking about the wealth disparity, the wealth gap, and how people are increasingly poorer, and how he was talking about, I said, like, how it's hard for someone to make their first million, but how the millionaire can easily make $10 million. And at one point in that interview too, he PBD admitted, it all goes to the top, right? And they always try to say, oh, capitalism and our economy, it's the trickle down economy, right? And it always comes back to you. And then we're like, we don't feel it. Like, where's the money coming into my pockets? And he admitted it always rises to the top, right? The cream always rises to the top. And he admitted it in that video. He let it slip. And they were talking about, like, yeah, it's either rich, keep getting richer. And that was the point, Andrew was making, was he was like, you wouldn't have these people. You wouldn't have all these upset people. I think the topic he was getting on is, why do people blame the Jays? He's like, people wouldn't be on the computer typing away, it's the Jays, or the Jays did this and they did that, and they're the problem to my problems, if everything around them wasn't falling apart and they weren't dead broke and didn't, see a way out, and they don't have a family, and they don't have, the white picket fence, they don't have a home, they don't have any prospect. All they have to look forward to is wage slavery. And working the 9 to 5 and working the grind and picking up a second job, after that, to make nothing and just survive in an apartment and eat SpaghettiOs, right? And that's why people are angry. And that's what I was getting to of, preparedness and everything, because as that continues and that anger grows, and that's why I was talking about the state of the world and everything, that's where we're at, man. And it's going to be an angrier and angrier society, in the divides between not only rich and poor, but cultures and people are going to widen. And that's why I've always talked about, and that's why I've supported nationalism, right? Because you can't import the third world and all these other countries and all these warring ideals and then put them together in this so-called melting pot and give everybody guns, because that is our right. And everyone who's a citizenry, and I go beyond citizenship, because I believe, it's basically it's God-given, right? It's beyond constitution and country or whatnot. It's religion. It comes from the Creator. It predates the Constitution and the country. So it goes to everyone. They all have the right to bear arms. And this administration doesn't believe so. And once again, if you were surprised, right, to Mr. Trump, the bump stocks and take the guns first, ask question later with the red flags. Now he's saying you can't go to protest with a loaded firearm. And, oh, this guy was ready for damage. He had 2 loaded magazines. Whoa. And then you got Judge Jeanine Pirro. She's out there saying, oh no, DC's a gun-free zone. And it's what we've always talked about, right? They all believe this. And we knew her record before. Someone posted something where she wanted to expand the assault weapons ban back in the day. And she goes on, I don't even care if you're a law-abiding gun owner. If you bring guns here, you're getting arrested and you're lucky if you get the gun back. And, it's a gun-free zone just like Chicago and New York City and all that. Not only are you not getting the gun back, it's going to be felony charges and they're taking all your guns and your rights away forever. That's what they all believe. None of these politicians believe in your God-given rights, right? It all can be taken away if you don't obey and grovel and kiss the boot and worship at the feet of government and worship the very floor that they step on. And that's what they don't understand. And that's what the people don't understand. I've had these fights, like I've said, with so many people, my family and friends, who consider themselves Republicans, and they think the Republicans are two-way, supporters, and they understand it, and they're, gun friendly. I'm like, no, man. They all live in gated communities and in their ivory towers, and they don't want us peasants owning the firearms. And they know as it becomes an angrier society and that social contract has been broken and we no longer give you the authority to rule, we no longer recognize you as the authority, as a lawful governing body. What do you think a bunch of people with AR-15s and AK-47s and firearms are going to do about it, right? We're not Europe. I've talked about it before. We don't throw rocks. The protesting and the waving the signs in the streets only goes on for so long until people start taking pot shots, and they already are, right? They've attempted on Trump. You're seeing assassinations of political figures like Charlie Kirk, and this is only going to continue, and it's going to go on, which was kind of the point of the video I was trying to get to before, where you got to get prepared for a non-secure, uncivil degradation of society. And that's where we're headed, and that's where we are. And what's going to be done about it? Are the Republicans ever going to nut up and do something about it? That's yet to be seen. I don't believe so, right? But anyway, till the next one, you know what it is. We are on our own, and nobody's coming to save us. So get right with God, because only He can save you. Freedom fighters out.